Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Whatever time you're watching this presentation, thank you for doing so. My name is Tomsic, and it's nice to meet you, even though it's by remote. Hopefully one of these days I'm going to meet you in person. I would like to talk about aging and memory today. And this presentation is for our Adulthood and Aging class, Psych 357. So let's get started. Well, it's a fact. We all get older. Not all of us want to get older, and not all of us actually achieve old age, but the fact of the matter is we are all actively aging. Now, I'm sure that you can think of a couple of senior moment jokes, and I know a couple of quite funny ones. And I'm constantly poking fun at my father and at myself, actually, for forgetting things, becoming forgetful as we get older. A lot of my friends are in their mid-20s. I'm in my mid-30s. And whenever we're trying to remember something from class and I can't quite pull up the details, I blame my age all the time. And I'm not particularly ancient. I think mid-30s is almost middle age, really. But I never hesitate in pulling the age card when it comes to being forgetful. And what I wanted to look at was whether or not there's really as much validity in that as we seem to think there is. I mean, we have all these jokes, we have all these assumptions that older adults are going to be forgetful. But then at the same time, you meet some older adults who are not at all forgetful, who are very sharp. So I wanted to know, I guess, a little bit more about the topic specifically of memory and aging. So when it comes to our memory, the two things that I want to explore with this particular presentation are, firstly, how does aging affect our memory? And secondly, how can we minimize memory decline as we age? Is there a way to do that? I hope there is. Let's find out. So using the 2015 edition of the memory textbook by Badley, Eysenck, and Anderson, there are two different theories of memory decline due to aging they present. The first theory is that nature has designed our bodies and our brain to decay at the same rate. And so memory will just naturally happen as our body begins to decline, so will our mind, and by default, so will our memory. Just kind of decline at an easy and regular pace. The second theory is the weakest link theory. And the idea behind this theory is that the frontal lobe is the weakest part of our brain. And so it's going to deteriorate more quickly than the rest of our brain. And that's why we forget different tasks, and we forget to bring things with us and all these kinds of things before we forget to say, or before we lose the ability to speak or do math, things like this. So that's the weakest link theory. Now, according to the textbook, researchers seem to be very divided on these theories, and they really seem to favor one over the other. I didn't really see anything in any of the studies that would lead me to necessarily believe one or the other from an empirical point of view, but just on my own instinct, I think I tend to lean towards the nature just naturally building us to deteriorate over time. To me, that makes more sense, but like I say, I have no formal evidence on this. There are a few different types of memory that I'm going to be talking about today. Working memory, episodic memory, perspective memory, semantic memory, and implicit memory. So what is working memory? Working memory is part of our short-term memory that allows us to keep track of information until we need to use it. And according to the text, it does kind of follow that working memory is susceptible to the effects of age. Now, how does this happen? Older adults tend to be unable to sort out irrelevant information. And also, they seem to be less able to divide their attention between tasks. So as we age, it's going to become harder for us to ignore distractions. Okay? So when we're working on a task, if there is other noise or things going on that we can see, visual stimuli, we're going to maybe be unable to tune that out and focus on the task at hand. And because we can't focus on that task, it's disrupting our ability to hang on to the information we're trying to remember. Now, being less able to divide our attention between tasks, essentially that refers to multitasking. So, for example, my job is during the week as an administrative assistant, and I am constantly multitasking. I'll be on the phone, I'll be listening to my boss's conversation to see if she needs a file pulled, I'll be trying to send a fax and send an email at the same time. It gets a little bit crazy. And right now I can juggle it, no problem. But studies are showing that as we age, this will become more difficult. So where I might right now be able to multitask 4 or 5 things, as I get older, I may only be able to multitask 2 things, maybe only focus on one task at a time. So next I'm going to talk about episodic memory. Episodic memory refers to our memory of autobiographical events, so specific and personal memories that we have. It also kind of handles the way that we're able to put events into an order as well in our minds. So when we're thinking of a story, that kind of thing. Now, studies do show that we have a decline in episodic memory as we age. How does this affect us? So we may have difficulty retrieving information as we age. We may be unable to self-initiate retrieval of information. So even though we have the memory, we might not be able to pull it out without some kind of a visual cue, for example. It also can become more difficult to recall words than pictures. That was an interesting study. Our recognition as we age seems to stay the same as when we're younger, but our ability to actually recall and remember items does decline as we age, which I thought was really interesting. We also, as we get older, we may have difficulty binding together different features of events. So we might remember certain parts of a story, for example, or certain parts of a vacation, but have difficulty putting them in chronological order or having them make sense even. And these are all defects that happen in episodic memory over time. So prospective memory. Prospective memory is our ability to remember to do something in the future. And sadly, the jokes are right. It does have a tendency to decline as we age. So there are 3 kind of pieces of prospective memory, and each of these pieces can have either a small decline in each piece or can be missing one piece altogether. So for example, as we age, we may find that we have difficulty or an inability even to remember an action that we're supposed to be performing, to remember the time that that action is supposed to be performed at. And then the other part of that is somehow we need to be able to maintain the memory of those first 2 pieces in our minds. So for example, if I have a dentist appointment the day after tomorrow, First of all, I have to remember that I have a dentist appointment. Secondly, I have to remember it's the day after tomorrow. But thirdly, I have to be able to store that. I have to be able to maintain that in my mind in order for that to work. Because if I just remember I have a dentist appointment, I have a dentist appointment, I have a dentist appointment, or I just remember the day after tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, and I can't piece those two things together, I'm going to have a failure with my perspective memory. I'm not going to remember my appointment. I'm going to miss it. Sadly, I already kind of do this on a regular basis. So hopefully that's not going to decline too much more as I age, but we'll get into some ways that I can maybe help myself to remember appointments and that kind of thing. So next I'm going to talk about semantic memory. Now, semantic memory is our ability to remember facts and relevant information, I suppose. So our ability to remember who the Prime Minister is, or what day of the week comes after Tuesday, things like this. These are all part of our semantic memory. And I was actually quite surprised that there doesn't seem to be a lot of decline in semantic memory as we age. I found this to be kind of unbelievable, actually. I thought for sure we would lose track of facts and figure, the finer details of things. But realistically, it seems to be that especially in areas of vocabulary and verbal intelligence, semantic memory does not really seem to be affected at all. So I find that really interesting because while it means that we may have trouble, say, retrieving a specific word. So for example, if I am looking at a picture of a soccer ball, I may have trouble actually coming up with the word soccer ball. If I see the word soccer, I will know what it means. I will be able to use it. That part of the memory is not going to be affected by age, and I thought that was very interesting. So the last kind of memory I'm going to talk about is implicit memory. And implicit memory is the kind of memory that we use to allow ourselves to perform new tasks without really thinking about it. For example, if you were to ask me to call and order you a pizza, I would pick up the phone and I would call. My implicit memory is what allows me to remember how to actually pick up the phone and dial. I don't really have to think about it. I just do it automatically because my brain remembers how. I was quite interested to find that the findings from research are very inconclusive about this type of memory. Now, why is that? I think part of it has to do with the way the research is actually conducted. And there was a study that actually discussed this specifically. As we age, we have declines in our motor control. So we have trouble with, having a steady hand, for example. And what these researchers, Parrott, Barra, and Messier, have put forward is that while these studies are showing that there is a decline in implicit memory, what might actually be being measured is a decline in motor skills and fine motor control. So a lot of these studies will ask participants to trace along a line with a stylus, for example. Well, if you can't keep a steady hand, you're going to have to move much more slowly. You're not going to maybe be able to stay on the line or to keep drawing between the lines. And when the data is being recorded, this might show a decline in implicit memory and your ability to perform the task, when in reality it's actually measuring your motor control skills. So I thought that was a very good point that they brought up in their study. So, what can we do to prevent memory decline as we age? I hope there's a miracle answer here. Let's take a look at what some of the research is telling us. So, there are a few basic suggestions, and I'm sure that none of these are going to come as a huge shock to you. Maintain good health. Eat well. Exercise regularly, specifically aerobic exercise, as some of the studies have shown. Remain mentally active is the next point. And that can be from doing puzzles, or from trying to learn another language, or engaging in stimulating conversation. Any of these things will help you to remain mentally active. And the last one is one that I think everyone assumes is one of the best things that you can do for your memory, is to get a really good night's sleep. A lot of students, when they're studying for exams, I'm hearing more and more from fellow students like, hey, it's so important to make sure you go to bed on time and get a proper sleep. Now, I look at this list and I kind of go, oh, man, I don't do that one. And, well, I definitely don't exercise. Let's count that one out. And get a proper sleep. I don't think I ever get a proper sleep. I'm the worst sleeper in the world. So I look at this list and I go, well, I got 2 out of 5. However, the good news is there's hope for me, because there are a couple of studies, one in particular is talked about in the textbook, that shows these factors vary greatly from individual to individual. So yes, of course it is a good idea to maintain good health, eat well, exercise regularly. All of these things are great, but they're not necessarily going to guarantee that you're going to have a good memory. And if you don't do all these things, that's not a guarantee that you're going to have a horrible memory. It could go either way. There's also an interesting study that was done by Scullin in 2013 where it's discussed that slow wave sleep might not actually be beneficial to memory in older adults. It is in younger adults and in youth. Now, Scullin doesn't go into the details of this. This is something he wants to research further, but he's indicating that the results of his study are showing, hey, this might actually be kind of inhibiting memory in older adults. So he's going to be doing some more research in that area, he hopes. There are some other suggestions, of course, on how to help yourself remember as you get older. The first is to give yourself more time. We've already been over this. Our aching bodies are slowly declining. So that means maybe instead of expecting yourself to get something done in 30 minutes, give yourself an hour to get it done. I mean, worst case scenario, you can always bring a book and work on keeping mentally active, right? Right. That seems good to me. The second suggestion is rehearsal. So, if there's something you need to remember, try saying it over and over and over and over again. Or writing it down if there's something that you need to remember that way. There are a number of memory tricks you can use. For example, you can actually, if you need to remember a list of things, if you pair them with an action, you'll remember them better. So if I need to remember to pick up milk, butter, and bread, if I remember drink the milk, melt the butter, toast the bread, I'm more likely to actually remember the items I need to pick up from the store. I thought that was a handy little trick. I'm going to give that a try the next time I have to try to remember to do something on my way home from the school, which I'm notorious for losing in the middle. Give yourself retrieval cues. a couple of the studies actually talked about how it takes more working memory and more effort and concentration to self-retrieve memory. So if you can give yourself retrieval cues, and these can be things as simple as placing something out of the ordinary. So a friend of mine, for example, when she needs to remember something, she actually takes a book and stands it up in a doorway. She doesn't need to take the book anywhere, but as soon as she sees the book, she goes, oh, okay, there's something I need to remember. Yes, okay, I remember what it was. I have to remember to take the brownies to school and give them to Tanya because she's had a rough week. No, but these do work. And then my personal favorites are use tools. I have a day timer that is color coded, and if I don't write it down in the day timer, it does not get remembered at all. Everyone knows this about me. Anyone who wants to spend time with me or make plans with me, they make sure I write it down, because if it's not in there, it's just not going to happen. Additionally, I use my cell phone. They're handy. We all seem to have them these days, and they all have reminder functions on them and alarm functions on them. So, and the great thing about a lot of them is they also have location settings. So if I need to remember to do something when I get home, I can put in my address, and as soon as I pull into the driveway, the phone goes off, and I can remember to do whatever it is I was intending to do. I also found a neat little quote, actually, in one of the studies that says it's the personal beliefs that predict individual differences and outcomes, like the use of strategies in memory tasks. So part of what I take away from that is there is a little bit something to you're only as old as you feel. If you walk around like I have been doing, which now I have to change now that I've done this study, if you walk around saying, oh, I'm so forgetful, the alarm never helps me, or saying it over and over again never helps me, then that's more likely to be true. So if you believe that these little tips and tricks are going to work for you, and you believe that your memory is a good memory, you're more likely to remember things, which seems like a very, very simple idea, but I can easily see how it's true. So now I have to go back and practice not saying that I have a poor memory, and I guess although my memory may be declining with age slowly, I'm no longer going to use it as an excuse. So this concludes my presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it, and the following slides just contain my references. I hope you have a great day, and hopefully we will meet soon. All right, thank you.